You are listening to the podcast of the Matthias Corvinus Collegium, the largest talent management institute in Hungary. If you want to know more about our mission, please look up our English website at mcc.hu/en or check out our Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter channels. For interesting articles and analysis of our professors, external contributors, and students, look up our knowledge base at corvinec.hu/en.
Hello and welcome to the MCC podcast. I'm Luke Larson, visiting fellow here at the Matthias Corvinus Collegium, and I'm joined today by Sári Pontifex. She is a pro-life activist who works for the Hungarian pro-life organization Együtt az Életért, that's Together for Life, and the YouTube channel Egy Élet, One Life. So Sári, thank you very much for joining me on the podcast today.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, you're welcome. So to begin, Hungary gets a lot of attention from conservatives in my home country of the United States and throughout the West. And I think many of these conservatives see Hungary under Viktor Orban and the Fidesz party as kind of a model for conservative success. And that being said, where does Hungary stand on the question of abortion, which is so central to the political debate right now between the left and the right in the United States?
Yes, so if we're specifically, there's two aspects. Firstly, I suppose on a political level and then also on a societal level. So first, maybe on a political level, there have definitely been some steps in the right direction. Maybe the first one we could mention was back in 2012 when they actually modified the Hungarian constitution to include a little statement to say that every life deserves to be protected from fertilization. So that was a very positive step in the right direction, as well as just recently, 2 years ago in 2022, we had a heartbeat bill, which actually didn't change when abortion is available, but it did make it mandatory for women to have to go to the abortion procedure with a paper from an obstetrician gynecologist proving that they have prior heard the heartbeat of their child. So this we were also very happy about because of course, this is an opportunity for the child to really communicate and say, I am alive. And we were really happy about this. And of course, we are hoping for some more also direct protections for children in the future. But we are definitely happy about these steps. With regards to Hungarians, how they view abortion, well, there was, I think, what most of us tend to refer to as this Ipsos study from a couple years back, which showed actually rather discouragingly that 70% of Hungarians say that abortion should be available in all or most cases. So a pretty shocking statistic. But also there was another actually study that maybe I would contrast this with, which the Szent István Intézet did. It was a representative sample study. And here they asked people whether they think women in a crisis pregnancy should have, more institutional help available to them. And a resounding 92% said yes. So we see that people want to help women in these difficult situations. And I think most people would say that more help is needed, as well as 94% supported their initiative of having a helpline displayed on pregnancy tests. So women should immediately have access to this help. This project hasn't happened yet. We really hope it will. So I think that does show that people do want women to receive help. I think that's very positive. As well as from my personal experience, I do think that, well, this 70% sounds rather discouraging. But from personal experience, from conversations I've had, we do see that when people are really shown, what is at stake here, as I, like to put it, the two central questions of the abortion issue is fundamentally who is being aborted and how. And, we think that, most people know, fundamentals of fetal development, but, you would be surprised to discover that people aren't. They are astonished when they hear that the beginnings of a heart start beating at 3 weeks, that at already 6 weeks the child starts moving, even though the mother only feels this at around the 18th week. At around the 8th week, the child can suck his or her thumb. Brain waves can be detected. So really, development is so quick, and we really do have scientific consensus on when life begins at fertilization. So that, are some of the facts that, some people may know, for example, if a woman, has, already been pregnant, then, when people are happy about that, then they tend to, follow in great detail the apps about, where is the child in their development. But of course, they don't tend to follow this when it is, an unexpected pregnancy that they're not very happy about. So all that to say is that a lot of people are aware of fetal development facts. A lot of them aren't. But what most people, I would say 95 to 99% of people are not aware of is what the reality of an abortion is. And I have found that in my personal conversations that when I, draw people's attention to, what are these abortion procedures, they are truly shocked and horrified about the violence of what this means and how inhumane this is. And I really believe that if we were able to present these facts to people, then we would see a great turnaround in opinion. And this is what we've been trying to do on both our online platform, Fiatalok az Élet Szolgálatában on Facebook, and also on our YouTube channel, Egy Élet, is to bring this animation video showing people what happens during a first trimester abortion. And we also saw in the comment section just people being so horrified. So I really believe that, as hard as it is to discover this, I think it is necessary for this pro-life shift in public opinion.
Why do you think abortion is that popular in Hungary? Why is it that 70% say that it should be allowed in most or all circumstances?
Yeah, I think it's, probably very complex why that is, because not only do we have, this big support for it, but, per population rate, we do have a very high abortion rate, within Europe. Comparing to population and how many abortions take place, actually Eurostat statistics placed us third in the EU. And also historically, the region of Eastern Europe has been, one of the highest abortion rates in the world. So I think, looking at that we have 60 abortions a day, which means 22,000 a year. That is the third highest cause of death in Hungary, with over 6 million abortions in 68 years. Those are a lot of statistics, but I think it really drives home that a lot of people are affected by this, and it makes it a very personal and a very painful issue. And I think when so many people are affected by it, it becomes harder to maybe turn in the other direction, because if we look at it historically, it's really, I think there's a lot that still needs to be examined on this issue, but we really see the polarity of, on the one hand, We hear a lot of accounts of women who are saying, well, it was like being on a conveyor belt. They treated it like, just pulling a tooth, that this was really nothing special, that, we didn't have ultrasounds. Back in the day, of course, when it was legalized in 1956. But also, on the other hand, there were accounts as well. For example, a publication from 1957 of 90 stories of women who really regretted their abortions back then. So the picture isn't very clear with this regard, but I think maybe that's what I would highlight, that just how many people have been affected, leading to greater support, as well as, I think, still a lack of real awareness of what this issue means, I think, would be the main reasons behind it.
Mm-hmm. Under what circumstances is it possible to get an abortion in Hungary?
Yes, so I would say that in Hungary, we really have what would be the European average in many ways, in that abortion is legal up until 12 weeks, basically for any reason. I mean, in the law, it does say that, it's if the woman is in a so-called válsághelyzet, a crisis situation, but there is no proof that is required. So basically, essentially, for any reason, up until 12 weeks. And what is rather different from what is in the States, that in Hungary, this has always, for many years now, been in a way, basically part of healthcare, in the sense that it is subsidized by the National Health Service, which is, very different from the US, where it's a very hotly debated issue to not have taxpayer funding for abortion. Sadly, this does happen here. Despite the fact that abortion isn't healthcare, and there really is no situation where you would need an abortion to save a woman's life. I've interviewed different doctors on this. For example, one of my interviews on Egy Élet was with Dr. Kendra Kolb, a neonatologist, and we went through a lot of the situations that can arise. And there's always a way to help women in these situations. I mean, most of the time, it basically means delivering the child early. So inducing labor or cesarean section. And of course, the baby is treated with dignity and respect, and we have special medical professionals who specialize in treating these babies, the neonatologists. So, if the child does die, then that was not intended and there wasn't a direct attempt on their life. So it's both the question of the intent of not intending to kill the child, as well as the procedure itself being totally different. So I think there we do see a serious contradiction here when abortion is embedded in healthcare, while it is not in fact a health care procedure.
Mm-hmm. I suppose that would come as a surprise to many conservatives elsewhere who look at Hungary as taking bold conservative stances on a lot of issues. Why do you think it is that that abortion is allowed still here, that they haven't taken a more pro-life stance? Is it simply that it's so popular here with the public in general that it would be difficult to do anything legislatively, or what explains that, do you think?
Yes, I think it is that when, as politicians, when they do get these statistics of a 70% support for abortion, that seems very bad news to them, in the respect that it seems, potentially decreasing popularity, touching then such a controversial issue. So I think, that could be one of the primary motivators. I think with the steps that I mentioned early on, we do see that they have taken some pro-life steps, and that though cautious, they have wanted to head in a more pro-life direction. And I do think that as pro-lifers, I think bold moves are possible. And I think it's all about how we approach these measures, right? How we present them, how we communicate them, I think really makes a difference in how the public responds to these. I mean, I think that it would be very important to, protect every life in law, and simultaneous at the very same moment offer lots of readily available help to women in difficult situations, right? All the difficulties that surround them as they are pregnant, that these can be all taken away so that they can raise their child without these difficulties. So I think doing that, as well as on the third aspect, would be then at the same time communicating to people, these facts of, what is abortion, who is the unborn child? Why do we want to protect them? And why is abortion violent and bad? And how is it bad for the woman, the child, for society? We have very significant data. So I think if we really approached it from this aspect of protecting in law, offering readily available help, and communicating this strong pro-life message, I think it could be very, very successful. And I think we see examples of this in many actually states in the US who have successfully gone on to actually have complete bans on abortion after the overturning of Roe versus Wade.
Right. Going forward, what do you think is the right strategy here in Hungary? I know you mentioned this desire to move in a more pro-life direction among the government with this heartbeat bill. I know the family policy is something that is talked about a lot. Has Hungary had some success in protecting life through these measures? And what do you think is the right step going forward?
Yes, I mean, fundamentally, it's hard to know what causes a decrease in abortions because, for a long time now, every year we have seen a decrease. And obviously it's very hard to know, what is causing this decrease. We are very happy about it that, even if it's a smaller or a bigger decrease, that there is a tendency towards a decreasing amount of abortion. So that's very positive. And of course, because we believe that life is so valuable, we want fundamentally to arrive in a society where, there is protection for everyone from the beginning till the end of their life, from the womb to the tomb, as they say. And, that respect for life, that culture of life, does include having family-friendly policies, right? So because we think that life is so valuable, that of course means that we would like to see as many measures as possible that make having a family as easy as possible, in difficult situations, to have support so that people aren't left alone with their problems. So, I definitely think that bold movements are the right way and very much possible. And yes, we are very happy about also these family policies that have been happening, which fundamentally want, aim towards essentially having families feel that security to have children, right? Because many times people will say that, well, they are afraid to have a child because of financial reasons. So I think the government has been definitely trying to remove a lot of those concerns through helping people, the families have their own house, their own car, reducing taxes. So I think those are very good measures. Now, whether those have been the primary reason for decreases in abortions, I don't know, but I'm sure it's been a very positive contributing factor.
Right. You can give me an overview of what the pro-life movement looks like in Hungary today. What kind of activities are organizations like yours and others doing?
Yeah. So fundamentally, I mean, wherever pro-lifers are in the world, including us, we really, the most important two aspects of our work is the practical help and the education. So practical help-wise would be, of course, helping these women in crisis pregnancy, either to remove these difficulties in their life so that they themselves can raise this child, or if for a variety of difficult reasons they decide to place the child for adoption, then a lot of pro-life organizations also help with finding a good family for this child, which, by the way, the question of unwanted children is not true, because there are so many couples just waiting. I don't know if there's an official figure. I don't want to make an incorrect number, but I've heard that, up to 20,000 couples waiting for a child. So really a lot of people waiting to adopt. So that is one of the primary ways of helping, as well as actually after abortions, we see that many women do experience really a lot of, of course, there are physical risks, but also mental health wise. Many women suffer from the grief and regret of having an abortion. This is not rare at all. Recently, some years ago, the British Journal of Psychiatry published this study showing that after an abortion, there's an 81% increase of a woman having some kind of negative mental health issue. So pro-lifers are we are there to help with the healing as well, because we, more than probably anybody else, we know what she's going through. We realize the value of her child and what she's gone through, probably more than anyone else, and we want to facilitate that healing for her. So we also have organizations like Ráhe Szőlőskerte, which Rachel's Vineyard also exists in many other countries, helping these women, and oftentimes men as well, right, are very welcome to attend these healing weekends that they run. So that's the practical help. And then education-wise, of course, it's very important that, the practical help is very much, as I would put it, in the last minute scrambling to prevent a tragedy, which is how I would put it, right? And ideally, we wouldn't like anybody to be in that situation where, this tragedy almost happens, where an innocent life is lost. And we would like to protect women and their children from the violence of abortion, right? And while this last minute help is very needed and very important to our movement throughout the world, we want to, prevent somebody even thinking that this would be the best option for them, which we have seen is not, from these negative mental health outcomes and obviously due to the loss of life. So, for example, in our Students for Life chapter, Fiatalok az Élet Szolgálatában, we work to educate people on these basics of, fetal development, what is abortion, all the showing people the science behind the pro-life issue, as well as encouraging stories of people choosing life, under difficult situations, and just anything about basically a culture of life. So we are present online on our Facebook page, our YouTube channel, Edélet, or we also go out to events, we set up our booths, we have conversations with people, or we are invited to give talks. We host screenings of unplanned váratlan élet and then having conversations with people afterwards. So it's a very interesting work because it's always creative, right? How can I reach people in the most effective ways? So it's a very, very interesting work, always looking for new ways to reach people.
What inspired you to get involved in the work?
Yeah, a lot of people ask that because many times people think that you get involved because of a personal experience with abortion, and that is true. A lot of people do come into the pro-life movement because they have experienced the devastation of abortion themselves. For example, one of my wonderful pro-life colleagues, Olaj Anett, who helps run these abortion healing weekends and abortus.hu, reaching out to these women in crisis pregnancy. She herself had an abortion and just experienced how devastating and painful it was. And it led her to her incredible work today. But I don't have a story like this, and many of us don't. And for me, it all started back when I was 14, actually. I was given the task in a secondary school class. The teacher said, you have to pick a topic that is controversial and write an essay presenting both sides of the issue. And, I really have no idea why I picked abortion, but for some reason I did. And even though I grew up in a pro-life family, discovering during the research, this of, what happens during an abortion just really, truly broke my heart and shocked me really to the core of my being that, wow, this is happening to children, this brutal violence, and every day. And I was just utterly shaken, and really until this day, nothing else can move me in the way this issue does. And ever since then, for now, the 14 years that have passed since then, I've been researching and reading, and really have been just truly moved unlike anything else with this issue.
Now, I know you're half Hungarian, half English. Has your experience working in the pro-life movement been exclusively here in Hungary, or have you worked in the UK as well, or in other countries?
Yes. So, fundamentally, my interest, when it began, actually, I first discovered the American pro-life movement's materials. And the American pro-life movement really is the global leader on this topic. They have actually a bigger pro-life movement than the rest of the world's combined. And truly just incredible work, approaching the topic from really every angle, and really providing a lot of that backbone that I've really noticed the rest of the world as I speak with pro-lifers from different parts of the world. Everybody, has seen a live action video and has been impacted by their work. And it was the same for me, just their incredible professionalism and the combination of the science and these beautiful stories that they present, and how attractive and joyful they are. Because fundamentally, they think, gosh, people think this is, a very hard topic, and it is. But there is something just so positive and beautiful about standing up for life, and truly you meet some of the best people there. So it really is just such a positive movement. So that really just grabbed me, the American pro-life movement. And it's something I've, been really passionate about for a long time. But also, actually, I had the opportunity to do an internship at the pro-life campaign in Ireland. So that was actually during COVID. I was very fortunate to still manage to get out there and work in their Dublin office and, help them with researching and compiling their archives and really helping in anything that was needed. But those were some of the main things I did. And it was just very interesting to see what an organization in a country that, has achieved incredible things in the pro-life movement. I mean, they only legalized abortion a few years back. So holding out for such a long time was an incredible achievement. And of course, they are working towards turning it back as soon as possible. But yeah, it was a really great opportunity to see what has contributed to their success, what is, a well-functioning pro-life organization like. So, yeah, it was a very exciting experience.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, in the United States over the last 2 years, it's really been a time of change on the question of abortion. Obviously, 2 years ago this summer, Roe versus Wade was overturned, which I think filled a lot of pro-lifers with a lot of optimism, a lot of hope for the future. But I think that quickly changed when abortion went on the ballot in a lot of states. And a lot of states that you would expect to be very pro-life voted in favor of abortion measures or against pro-life measures. So I think there does seem to be some sense of pessimism now in the United States. How do you feel? Are you optimistic looking forward?
Absolutely. I mean, we have, for example, 14 states that have, total or near total bans on abortion. I mean, that's an absolutely incredible achievement. And in and of itself, that's just absolutely fantastic and such a resounding message to the world that, being pro-life isn't this backwards point of view. It's very much with the times, with science. And all the negative fear-mongering has not proven to be true of women dying and, all these horror scare scenarios, yes, of women dying in back alleys and et cetera, et cetera. So I think that has been a huge positive thing. And with regards to the ballots, I know that a lot of times, again, sadly, it was the communication which lost it, that I know a lot of times the other side unfortunately won these battles by actually painting a very not accurate picture of what these specific votes, referendums were about. So many times people thought that they were voting to protect women's health, that women shouldn't, be at risk in high pregnancy situations, that, women should still be able to get miscarriage treatment, which is, by the way, present everywhere. There isn't a single state which, bans abortion and miscarriage treatment. That is totally false and fear-mongering. So sadly, the public was willfully misinformed in many cases about what was at stake here. So I think that unfortunately contributed to a lot of these losses, despite pro-lifers' best efforts otherwise.
Right. Obviously, abortion is something that gets debated a lot, but these debates so often seem to just go in circles.
Mm.
How do people actually get convinced? like in your years of work with this, what actually changes people's minds on this question?
Yes, I mean, I think fundamentally there are a few key sort of apologetics, which is obviously the art of debating how we can really productively approach these conversations. And one of them is to, well, first of all, to not be antagonistic, to be friendly. It's in my conversations, it's much easier having this conversation with people who already know that I mean them well, that I care about them as a person, that I'm not just this angry person who wants to rob women of their freedom in this illogical, antediluvian way. So yeah, having that, approach of remaining calm, really listening to the other person, noting the concerns they have and answering them is very important to productive conversations, as well as two things also: asking people questions, leading them to think about what they think. Because oftentimes I think in the pro-life movement, or also as conservatives, we are very much put on the back foot, and it's important to be prepared and to have one's facts and to present them. But there does come a point where we have to push back a bit and say, and ask back, and what do you think and why do you think this? And really asking them to provide evidence for what they think, right? Asking questions, and through questions leading them to think deeply about things, because a lot of people haven't had the opportunity to really think about this issue in detail. They've only heard the slogans. They haven't thoroughly been presented the other side in a detailed manner, as well as telling people stories oftentimes helps, showing them the faces, of, say, somebody who survived an abortion. For example, I interviewed a man called Josiah Presley on Egyelet, who survived this attempt on his life. Unbelievable. Yes, abortion survivors exist. So, showing his story, or, interviewing people who chose life amidst difficult situations and showing how positive that was, or, the pain that came from choosing abortion. Or, also I interviewed a woman called Rebecca Kiesling who was conceived in rape, and showing that, that's also an issue that many people shy away from, but showing that, she does not deserve the death penalty for the crime of her father, and showing that she is just as much valuing life and love as the rest of us, and that her mother deserved so much better than the violence of abortion after the unspeakable horror that happened to her, which is rape. So I think those are very important, these fundamental, building blocks of speaking on abortion, as well as, it's kind of my mantra, yes, returning to what is abortion, what does abortion do? And those were some of the main things that we really centered around in creating our content online as well, in showing these short stories, showing these facts. So anybody who's listening, who is, thinks that abortion is okay, or is okay under certain situations, I highly recommend checking out our YouTube channel Egyelet, where you can find all of the information that I've been mentioning now, because we really want to show people that there are answers to all these very difficult life situations, and really science is behind the pro-life position.
One last question. If you are talking to somebody who's on the fence on this issue, or possibly pro-abortion, what is your go-to argument? How do you make the case, short amount of time, that abortion is wrong?
Yes. Well, fundamentally, I think, I do say to people that, we can't really debate when life begins. So, that is there is scientific consensus here. Recently, the University of Chicago had this survey, and they actually found that 95% of biologists agree that life begins at fertilization. And actually, there was no pro-life bias here. There was actually a pro-choice bias, because most of these biologists said that they are pro-choice, but they still said life begins at fertilization. So I always say to people that, listen, this is, there isn't a debate on this. The debate is whether you think this life has value or not, right? So it's a question of philosophy, not science, right? So I think that's very important to make that point very clear. And, just asking questions of people of, all these arbitrary lines of, when are there brainwaves, which, people will be surprised to, hear, as I mentioned earlier, that already at 8 weeks we can detect brainwaves, right? But all these arbitrary measures of, when are there brainwaves, or when is, the child self-conscious, when could they survive outside of the womb? All of these things are very arbitrary. And even outside of the womb, when we have been born, people are not, for example, self-aware when, either they are asleep or in a coma. Is it okay to kill them then? Even children, brain development, even when a child is born, their brain development is at the level of a cow. So many people are surprised to hear that, right? So even then, it's not that developed. And, does this increase in value, continue after birth? Because, the newborn only has the brain development of a cow. Does that mean that then a 15-year-old, is also worth more because their, brain is, almost fully developed, even though actually it takes even past our teen years to have our brain fully developed. So I think once you start asking people those questions, they really see that it's so arbitrary, the lines that they are drawing of when human life is valuable, as well as, again, going back to the reality of it, when they see how violent it is, they feel a lot more uncomfortable supporting such a violent act. So I think, after one has these conversations, a lot of people will, either become pro-life or at least more uncertain of their beliefs than they were beforehand. Actually, the March for Life, which we have had before, but we're having a bigger and so yes, basically fundamentally a much bigger March for Life upcoming on September 21st. Starting from Erzsébettér, and very excited about this. If anyone's interested, then you can go to mindenkiszületésnapja.hu. You can see all the details, and definitely worthwhile following us, because I think you'll be very surprised to find out a lot of the public figures who you would have not thought are pro-life, but who are actually ambassadors and supporters of this new March for Life. Just to mention a few names, János Lackfi, the very popular poet, Ági Szalóki, Soma Zambori, and there will be other people also who will be supporting and are ambassadors of this new March for Life. So make sure to follow us and join us on September 21st, as I really believe that this will be a very exciting and, new, in a way, beginning for the pro-life movement over here.
Wonderful. Well, thank you for the information. And as the Hungarians say, sok sikert.
Thanks so much, Luke.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to this MCC podcast episode. For further media content, please look up our English website at mcc.hu/en or look for us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. If you want to read more by our professors, external contributors, and students, check out our knowledge base at corvinec.hu/en.